Should Sir Keir Starmer tell Donald Trump when they meet in Washington next week? What should he say? He'll be the first European leader to meet the US president since the second term began with one big issue on the agenda. There they are over here, and you can see that unusually Sir Keir Starmer has a bigger head than Donald Trump. That's a rather surprising thought. Meanwhile, over here in Saudi Arabia, which is down here in the Middle East, the US is leading talks with Russia to end the war, although President Zelenskyy has been frozen out of the negotiations. He hasn't been invited. And then we've got in Europe here, over in Paris, not all of Europe, just about here. Meanwhile, Starmer has joined an emergency summit of European leaders in Paris. That was last night, to discuss how we're going to respond. And at the heart of it all is here, Ukraine, just on the border of Russia. He said the UK is happy to take the lead and deploy British soldiers to keep the peace in Ukraine, but he wants the US to play its part. He wants them to be...
consider committing British forces on the ground, but there must be a US backstop, because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again.
Now, we've seen the map of the world, but Donald Trump hasn't ruled out sending peacekeeping troops to Ukraine. Not yet. But the German Chancellor stormed out of the meeting in Paris last night. So Starmer needs to secure Trump's military support. Mike, how do you think he should work this out?
Well, the whole thing is a complete fiasco. You've just said that the German Chancellor walked out of the initial talks last night. They can't even agree. Headline in the Daily Telegraph: Germany rejects PM's Ukraine peace plan, OK? Now, he's going to take this peace plan to the United States. What he should tell the President of the United States is, we are immediately going up to 2.5% GDP on defence. I want to move towards 3%. Eventually, we must get to 5%, because that's where Poland are going.
Well, but just be clear that the reason, so people understand at home, why Germany walked out, he said, why are we talking about peacekeeping? This is premature. You don't give away all of your best chips on the table. We're not even at the stage of peacekeeping until we've got some semblance of a deal. Meanwhile, you've got the American president with Russia negotiating over the head of Vladimir Zelenskyy.
I totally agree. What Starmer's going to tell the president is, we still need you as an umbrella. Trump has made it absolutely clear that he has the option to pull out of Europe altogether, and you guys have got to get your act together. First thing that happens, they start falling out. Now, the interesting thing about the Saudi talks is everybody's saying, Mr. Zelensky's not going to be there. Hang on, there's a lot of other people not going to be there, the leaders of Europe. Yep. The Russian border covers a multitude of European countries, and yet none of us have been invited to the talks between Trump and Vladimir Putin, because Trump gets on with Vladimir Putin.
Well, I mean, doesn't it say something where you've got Zelenskyy saying, look, we're going to need a European army? Doesn't it say something about Europe? And it also says something about Britain. You know, I remember, as I suspect you do, many of our viewers will as well, you know, that back in the day, as the kids like to say, that we ended up winning the Cold War. This started because Margaret Thatcher, right, had a relationship with the not yet leader of Russia, Mikhail Gorbachev, and she very famously said, I could do business with him.
Yes.
And it was her alongside Ronald Reagan, Britain playing a central role in bringing peace to the world and securing a safety, so much so that people thought that was the end of history. Now, we're not invited to the table, and neither are the Europeans, despite, as Mike says, the fact that we are the most likely, most especially the European Baltic states, to be the most threatened by Russia.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a terrible state that we find ourselves. It's quite frightening, actually. I mean, in less than a month, Trump has completely turned the world order upside down. And the problem is, Trump, is so mercurial and so, arrogant and narcissistic, and God knows what his motives are, that he can change his mind from one day
capricious,
to the
you might say.
Beyond capricious, really. So whatever Starmer tells him may or may not fall on deaf ears. The problem is that Britain, until the Labour government came in, had for some years been a complete laughing stock internationally because of terrible Tory government and things just falling apart here.
They're still a laughing stock. They're a laughing stock now.
Well, I think, Keir Starmer got a lot of stick, in the last couple of months because he spent a lot of time travelling the world and quietly travelling the world.
The question is, Europeans are meeting. The question is, does it really matter? So we're going to go to some calls. People have said that the conversations between Putin and Trump are appeasement, and they represent appeasement now. I've got to ask a question. No doubt people are calling in. I wonder whether it's appeasement. Now, don't forget that this appeasement started in 2014 when the Russians invaded the Crimea and nobody did anything about it.
Obama didn't do anything.
Right. And Trump has made Putin now another very powerful man in the world.
Well, just wait a second. Let's hear what John in Greater Manchester has to say. John, what should Starmer say to Trump when he finally meets him? And it's worth remembering, by the way, that we're pretty down the list when it comes to countries' leaders that have met the American president.
Hi, good morning there, Judge Windy. All right, mate.
Good morning, John.
Let's stop immigration and let's save Britain.
Well, I mean, that's a rallying cry to somebody out there, but not exactly on topic. Thanks very much, John. Have a great day. Shelley, Newcastle upon Tyne. What do you think? What should Keir Starmer say to the American president?
Well, I think he's rushed to go and see him. I mean, Europe aren't even sure of what they want to do themselves. I mean, from what we heard, Germany stormed out. They're not putting troops. So why is he going over when Europe aren't even think on what they're going to do? And they've had nearly 3 years to try and broker a deal between them. Trump's come in. He said in the election he was going to try and get a deal, and that's what he's doing. And now Starmer's trying to look like the man of the moment. He's going to demand. Trump's already said he's not going to put his troops there, and I don't blame him, because that is part of. It's not even part of NATO, Ukraine. So
well, just let me, Shelley, let me tell you this, because I think it might be important to you. Vladimir Zelenskyy has called for the creation of an army of Europe. And the reason for that, Shelley, is because the worry here is that once you appease a dictator, I keep coming back to her, but Margaret Thatcher, right, she said, the thing about dictators is that you never appease them, they need to be beaten, otherwise they'll carry on. And the worry is President Obama did nothing, neither did the world, after Russia invaded the Crimea. Now we have the situation where he invaded a neighbour. Some might say it's a bit like the invasion of Poland. And there will be countries, the Baltic states, right, which are members of the European Union, right, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, modern Western countries that are quaking in their boots right now. Mike, I've got to ask you, thank you very much, Shelley. I have to say a lot of people are agreeing with you. Do you think this represents a moment where Britain needs closer ties with Europe, bearing in mind that the leader of Ukraine is saying, look, if you want to protect the European states that are threatened by Russia, you need a European army?
No, I think that United Kingdom must now become isolationist. What we've got to do is build up our forces in this country, go to 3%, go to 3.5%, restore our Air Force, our Navy and our Army, and look after ourselves.
Nina,
we don't get on with Europe.
You say that. To take it to 5% would cost £80 billion.
It's worth it.
And the other thing is, our army is at the smallest,
exactly.
Since the Napoleonic Wars. That's 200 years.
Right.
That's 70,000, which is, we don't have it. But what we do have is we have soft power with Trump, because and we can be a bridge. Keir Starmer can be a bridge between Europe and
I don't think
Trump.
he can.
He can be a bridge. I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that makes us attractive to Trump, not just because we're not part of Europe, we have a royal family, and this is as venal and as pathetic and as shallow as Trump is. What he wants, partially, in one of the ministries, is a royal visit to a state.
Well, that may or may not be happening. In the meantime, what Kimmer is calling for is a backstop. Say, look, we'll do some of the work, but you need to guarantee the situation.
But Trump's already said no.
If Russia invades, the reality is Europe is, some would argue, frankly, over. So that's a chilling thought, exactly as Nina, you described. Now, after the break, but now, more of your calls on what should Starmer tell Trump? Sir Keir Starmer should tell Trump when they're meeting in Washington next week. Our Defence Secretary, John Healey, is giving a speech right now, and he says the outcome of the Ukraine negotiations will define the security of our world for a generation to come. That is what's at stake. The number is 027 862 2222. That's the number you'll need. Get in touch with us now. We're going to go, first of all, over to Essex and to you, Caroline. Look, you know, the question is, does a special relationship matter anymore? And if it does, if Sir Keir Starmer walks into the Oval Office, assuming that's where they'll meet, and he stands by the resolute desk, the one that Elon Musk was behind last week, what should he say to Donald Trump? Should he bang on the table or should he be more conciliatory? What would you do, Caroline?
I would bang on the table. He shouldn't interfere.
Why is that?
Because, first of all, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Oh, this is Sir Keir Starmer.
No, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
But I think what they've got to do is get Europe together, all of Europe, not only just France and Germany. But my family, my father was born in Upper Silesia, and I have family over there, still in their 90s, an aunt and uncle. When they heard all this was kicking off, they were in tears for another war.
They were, and I
that's
suspect.
what it's building
Thank you for calling, Caroline. Essex, you know, there'll be a lot of people in Poland, in the Baltic states, that in Finland, that have borders with Russia, that understand that there needs to be a strong European defence to deter Russia from its already stated ambitions. And, you know, I don't think viewers know, I'm a joint Polish and British national, and a number of Polish friends are deeply worried. What you're saying, I think, to paraphrase your words, is that Europe needs to get together, and that's exactly what Vladimir Zelenskyy is saying. There needs to be a European army. I'll come to you in a second, Nina, but I'm going to go first to Berkshire and Denise. Denise, what should he say when he goes to the White House?
Well, I think the first thing he should say is that he's just not going to be he's not going to appease Trump. He's going to support Europe because it's on our doorstep. I mean, you know, Putin and Trump are very similar characters. They're dictatorial. And if you go against Trump as you go against Putin, you'll feel their wrath. And I think Keir Starmer needs to be very strong, which I'm not sure he's going to be up against Trump, because Trump is narcissistic, he's dictatorial, and I think it will be very difficult for Keir Starmer to hold his own with Trump.
Yeah,
but I think he's got to do that.
It's a very interesting point, Denise. You know, I don't know why I keep coming back to it, because it's, I suppose, the nearest thing historically. Do you think about the Cold War and Russia? There's a speech that Margaret Thatcher gave to the joint sessions of Congress in 1985, and she stood there speaking to all of the lawmakers in America, and she said, you remember, people, that it was Britain and the world's strength that brought them to the table, not our willingness to negotiate. So I hear what you say, but I wonder, Denise, and I'm going to go to Marsha and Kent, whether what Sir Keir has to do, which you've just intimated, Denise, is to go and speak Trump and speak Putin, which is not Russian or whatever brand of American that Trump speaks, but to speak strongman. Marsha and Kent, do you think that that's the language that's required?
I think not only should it speak strongly to him, he should tell him that there should be no discussion that does not involve the Ukraine, because we are talking about a foreign country. You cannot have two different people, Russia, who are aggressive, Trump, who is very aggressive, discussing somebody else's land. Why would you do that? Why? That is
because
so...
Right, I'm going to bring you in there, Mike.
Because of the balance of power in the world. I mean, after the Second World War, the Marshall Plan was introduced by the Americans. They paid for it all because it was still the Soviet Union whose plan was to dominate the world. Right. So America, the king of capitalism, had to keep them out, OK? That's why we had a Marshall Plan. But Donald Trump doesn't see the need for that now, because he sees Russia as a strong power led by a strong man, and it's all about commerce. What he wants from the Ukraine now is $500 billion repayment for the money he's given them.
Nina,
he wants 500 million of 500 billion of mineral wealth, because Ukraine is very rich in minerals like lithium and titanium,
right.
And he's demanding that this is some way going to recompense for the money that America's outlay.
If he's investing, if it's going to protect you, what he's saying is that America wants a return on its investment.
The thing is that Trump admires
he is all
Putin.
about the art of the deal, as he's very famous
He
for.
admires Putin, but you cannot trust Russia. You cannot trust Russia at all. I mean, I know you mentioned you're Polish. My father was Polish. Yep. He happened to be born in the part of Poland that was then Ukraine.
Right.
So he went to Lviv University, which is now Lviv. Sure. Yeah. And so when that was when
you
the
definitely
Allies,
can't trust Russia, but I think Trump can keep Putin in check.
I guess the question is, perhaps for some people, who is more likely to achieve peace? You know, it's worth just remembering the staggering numbers. You know, tens of thousands of Ukrainian, mostly young men, and perhaps up to 600,000, maybe more, we don't know. Russian, chiefly boys, sons, husbands, etc., dead in this war. You know, some people might be asking, look, it's one thing to think about strategy, but in the short term, how do we achieve perhaps a ceasefire? Wait a second, let us first, if we can, go to Northamptonshire and to Vincent. Vincent, what do you think? Is it okay, you can see our world map, to exclude the head of state whose country we're talking about, Ukraine? He's not at the talks in Saudi Arabia. What do you think about that, Vincent, in Northamptonshire?
100% he should be there. It's his country we're talking about. It would be like someone arguing over your property and not including you. It was totally wrong. At the end of the day, the American president is a businessman. He's already shown that with Gaza. He wants to build a strip investment for later on. Other people's needs are irrelevant to him. He's already said, and he's right about put America first. The rest of the world need to practice the same as what he preaches, and Europe need to put themselves first. I don't believe Starmer is strong enough to deal with Trump.
Well, thanks very much. What you're saying is what a lot of people are calling, and they have the same point of view. The answer is, if you want to protect Europe's border, and to some extent it's what Vladimir Zelenskyy is saying too, you've got to put up or shut up. Exactly. Pay for the defence. It's not for America anymore, especially bearing in mind Trump's view of the world. Absolutely. To go and fund an organisation that's going to protect the borders.
Europe has been sleepwalking in this issue. It has. And the thing is that Ukraine has been left to fight. This is our war, because our furthest border is Ukraine.
You're right. We've been holding the coat while they've been fighting.
But the thing is with Trump, you know, he's a businessman, obviously, but he's also a property developer. What he really cares about is himself. What he wants is apart from a royal visit, which might mollify him somewhat, is he wants the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, I don't think he's going to get that. I mean, whatever he does. I mean, some would argue that the Abraham Accords, had it been any other leader, might have resulted in a prize like that. Barack Obama, for example, got a Nobel Peace Prize in the first year of his presidency. Who knows what they're thinking? But Hugh, last word to you up in Birmingham. What should he say when he goes into?
Yes.
What's that?
Right. What I'm saying, that's a very good question. What he should have said to them is that he's not taking part in this discussion unless Ukraine or somebody in Europe is present. Now, when the war started, what happened is that the world almost shut down because Ukraine was not able to send their goods and services across. So why having a discussion when they're not present, and what is the outcome? How are they going to know about it?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to cut you a bit short, Hugh. You make a point, and to add to what you have to say, you know, some people say more jaw and less war. And the reality is, whether you think Ukraine should be there, this is the first time that America has really spoken to Russia in the 3 years since their illegal and criminal invasion directly between the presidents.
You don't know what goes on in the background.
That matters. Now, thank you for all your calls on this.